Welcome to Nazir Fears, where your darkest nightmares come to life.
Story 1. The Glass Charm. Rain fell over the city like a whisper that refused to end. The streets shimmered under streetlights, each reflection like an open pupil staring back. In a quiet corner of a flea market on the outskirts, a woman named Lila stood beneath a dripping awning, her breath visible in the cold air. She'd come here often, collecting strange things. Old lockets, cracked mirrors, anything with a story. She said she found beauty in objects that had been forgotten. That morning, she would find something that would never forget her. The vendor was an old Turkish man with eyes too sharp for his age. He smiled when Layla stopped at his table, where dozens of small trinkets hung from strings. Amulets, charms, tiny stones carved into symbols. Among them was one that caught her instantly. It was a simple blue glass circle, no bigger than a coin, with a white and black center like a staring eye. It was cracked slightly at the edge, and when the light hit it, it seemed to shimmer as if alive. "Evil eye," the vendor said softly, noticing her interest. "Protects from jealousy, from harm. But this one, different." Layla frowned. Different how? The man hesitated, glancing at the amulet as if afraid it might hear him. This one was not meant to protect. It sees too much. It remembers. She laughed, thinking it was just sales talk, and offered him a few bills. He tried to refuse, muttering something in Turkish under his breath, but she insisted. As he wrapped it carefully in paper, he whispered, "If it cracks again, do not keep it. It means it has seen you." That night, Layla returned to her small apartment. She hung the charm above her door, more as decoration than belief. She poured herself a drink and scrolled through her phone, ignoring the low groan of wind against her windows. Outside, lightning flashed, and for a moment, her reflection in the glass showed two sets of eyes staring back. She blinked. The second pair vanished. The next morning, she found the charm lying on the floor. It hadn't fallen far, but when she picked it up, there was a new fracture running through its center, splitting the pupil. She remembered the vendor's words and felt a strange chill, but shrugged it off. Maybe the hook had been loose. She hung it again and left for work. By evening, Layla couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. On the subway, she caught glimpses, faces turning just as she looked away, reflections shifting in windows, eyes following her from passing advertisements. She laughed it off as paranoia, but her hands trembled when she unlocked her apartment door that night. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. She poured wine, turned on some music, and tried to relax. But the song cut off mid-chorus, replaced by static. Her phone flickered, showing the black screen of her camera app open on its own. She picked it up. The camera was pointed toward her front door, where the charm hung perfectly still. In the center of the blue glass, a faint shimmer pulsed, like an iris constricting. She dropped the phone. That night, she dreamed of an endless hallway lined with mirrors. Every reflection showed her standing still, except one. In the farthest mirror, her reflection smiled back slowly, its eyes black and hollow. When she woke, her room was filled with the faint sound of whispering, soft, rhythmic, like chanting. The charm swayed slightly in the still air. Days passed. Layla stopped sleeping. She started taping her windows shut, turning her mirrors to face the wall. But even then she could feel it, the weight of something unseen staring from corners. Her co-workers noticed the change. Her once bright personality dimmed into silence. One of them, a friend named Aisha, visited one evening, bringing food. Layla barely opened the door. "You look awful," Aisha said softly. "What's wrong?" "It's watching me," Layla whispered. "It never blinks." Aisha frowned, following her gaze toward the charm hanging above the door. "You mean that thing? It's just a trinket." "Don't touch it," Layla screamed suddenly, her voice echoing unnaturally. Aisha froze. The air felt thick, suffocating. The charm moved slightly, though there was no wind. Its blue center gleamed, and for a moment, Aisha swore she saw something shift inside it, like a pupil focusing. "Layla, maybe you should get rid of it." Layla nodded slowly. That night, she took the charm down and placed it on her table. She wrapped it in paper and dropped it into a drawer. Then she turned off the lights and went to bed. At 3:07 a.m., the sound of glass cracking woke her. She turned on the lamp. The drawer was open. The paper was torn. The charm lay in the middle of the floor, glowing faintly blue. It was cracked again, the fracture now forming a perfect line across the center, like a closed eyelid. As she stared, it began to open. Layla screamed. The next morning, Aisha came to check on her. The apartment was unlocked, silent. The lights were off. In the middle of the room, the table was overturned, papers scattered. The drawer lay open, empty. Layla was gone. Police found no signs of struggle, just shattered glass near the door. But one detail stuck with the investigators. On the wall opposite the front door, a faint circular burn mark about the size of a hand, shaped like an open eye, stared back at them. The old vendor was questioned, but by then, his stall was gone. No record of his name, no lease, nothing. Weeks later, Aisha received a package at her office. No return address. Inside, wrapped in thin brown paper, was the same blue glass charm. Flawless now, no cracks. A faint smell of smoke clung to it. Beneath it was a small folded note in Layla's handwriting. It read only 4 words. It finally blinked back. Story 2. The Painter's Curse. Rain slid down the window like streaks of ink, blurring the world outside into watercolor shadows. In a small town near Izmir, an artist named Cem lived alone in his seaside studio. His paintings were known for one strange thing: the eyes. Every portrait he painted seemed to stare back, so lifelike that viewers often swore they could feel them following as they walked by. Cem would smile when they said that, but inside, he knew it wasn't a compliment. It was a warning. He hadn't always painted that way. Years ago, he was just another struggling artist who couldn't sell a canvas. But everything changed when he found the eye. It happened one summer night. Cem had gone wandering through the old part of the city, drunk on frustration and cheap wine. He stumbled into a forgotten street of antique shops and incense stalls. One store caught his attention, its sign hand-painted, letters fading, reading, charms against the unseen. Inside, the air smelled of dust and something older, like burned herbs and metal. Behind the counter sat a woman, her face veiled, her hands tattooed with symbols he didn't recognize. She said nothing when he entered. Cem's eyes fell on a small object lying under a glass dome. It was an amulet, a circular blue glass eye surrounded by silver. But unlike any Nazir amulet he'd seen before, this one had depth. The black pupil wasn't flat. It looked sunken, as if it truly receded inward. When he leaned closer, it almost seemed to shift, like something beneath the glass moved to meet his gaze. "How much for that?" he asked. The woman's voice rasped like dry leaves. "That one is not for sale." He smiled, thinking it a trick to drive up the price. Everything has a price. She looked up, and though her face was hidden, he felt her eyes pierce through the veil. "You are not ready to be seen." He left without buying it, but that night as he painted, he couldn't get it out of his head. The next morning when he woke, the amulet was sitting on his windowsill. No note, no explanation. From that day, his art changed. His hands seemed guided by something unseen. The faces he painted looked more alive, more haunted. People loved it. His work sold faster than he could finish it. Galleries called, collectors offered thousands. Sem's fame spread, and with it, a quiet dread grew inside him. Because every time he finished a portrait, he could see it, faintly at first, in the reflection of the eyes he painted. The amulet, hovering somewhere behind the glass, as if peering through his work. He tried ignoring it, but then the whispers began. At first only while painting. Faint murmurs like a voice underwater, repeating his name, urging him to look closer. He started sleeping less, painting more, as though compelled. The portraits got darker. The smiles disappeared. The eyes, those beautiful, terrifying eyes, became the only thing he could paint. His agent, Ayla, noticed. "Cem, these are disturbing. What happened to your landscapes?" He only smiled. "The eyes are landscapes now." She left uneasy, not realizing she'd never see him alive again. The last days of Cem's life are pieced together from fragments, neighbors' testimonies, half-written notes, and the final painting found in his studio. A fisherman living nearby claimed he saw Cem working non-stop for 3 days straight, lights burning all night. He didn't eat. He didn't even blink, the man said, just stood there, staring at the canvas. On the third night, a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked across the shore, and lightning briefly illuminated Cem's studio window, showing him standing there, staring at something unseen. Then the light went out. When Ayla arrived the next morning, the door was unlocked. The smell hit her first, a mix of turpentine and something sour. Cem's easel stood in the middle of the room, covered by a sheet. His body wasn't there. On the wall behind the easel, written in red paint, were 4 words. "It finally saw me." Ayla pulled back the sheet covering the painting. It was a self-portrait, but the eyes, they weren't his. They were the amulet's, a deep, swirling blue that seemed to move, like water rippling over glass. If she leaned closer, she could see her reflection twist in their depths, her face stretching, bending. For a moment, she swore she saw something inside the painting blink. She screamed and ran, calling the police. When they arrived, they found the room empty. The portrait was gone. Only one thing remained. On the windowsill where Cem once found the amulet, a faint circular burn mark shaped like an open eye. A month later, an art collector in Paris bought a haunted portrait from a private auction. The seller claimed it was painted by a Turkish artist who vanished mysteriously. When the crate arrived, the buyer joked to his wife about the superstition and hung it in his living room. That night, their security camera recorded something strange. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the lights flickered and the painting fell from the wall. When the man picked it up, the eyes in the portrait had changed, now staring directly outward, glassy, as though alive. He called the auction house the next morning to demand an explanation. But the number he dialed didn't exist. The last footage of him, captured 3 days later, showed him sitting alone before the painting, whispering over and over, "It's still painting me." Story 3, The passenger's eye. It was 2:17 a.m. when the radio crackled with static and the dispatcher's voice broke through the quiet hum of the taxi. "Rafi, you got one last fare. Pickup from the Old Harbor Road. Cash job." Rafi sighed. He'd been driving for 12 hours straight, his eyes heavy, his hands stiff from gripping the wheel. The city of Karachi never slept, but nights like these made him wish he could. The harbor road was the worst, half deserted, littered with broken lamps, and thick with the smell of salt and diesel. Still, money was money. He turned the cab down the wet, glistening road, headlights sweeping over rusted containers and abandoned fishing sheds. The rain had just stopped, leaving everything drenched and shimmering. A figure stood at the curb, a woman dressed in black, holding a small leather bag, her head covered. She opened the back door silently and slipped inside. Rafi glanced at her through the mirror. Her face was pale, almost gray, and her eyes, a piercing, unnatural blue, caught the reflection of the dashboard light. "Where to?" he asked. She whispered, "Just drive." He frowned but pulled onto the road. The rain began again, softly tapping the windshield like impatient fingers. The woman didn't move or speak. Rafi tried small talk, asked if she was from around here, if she wanted the heater on. But she just stared straight ahead, her reflection in the glass, motionless. After a few minutes, he noticed something odd. In the mirror, her eyes seemed wrong. When he turned slightly, the pupils didn't follow the light. They stayed fixed, almost like they weren't eyes at all, but small glass stones catching the glow. He brushed off the thought, blaming exhaustion. But then she spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. "You've seen it too, haven't you?" Rafi blinked. "Seen what?" "The eye." Her voice sent a shiver up his spine. "I don't know what you mean," he said quickly, glancing back. But she wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring down at her lap, clutching something in her hands. In the dim glow, he saw it. A small blue amulet, cracked, its center blackened as if burned. "I thought it would protect me," she whispered. "But once it chooses you, it follows. You can never give it away, only pass it on." The cab, filled with a strange hum, like distant chanting or wind moving through a tunnel. Rafi gripped the wheel tighter. He wanted to drop her off, anywhere, but the road ahead stretched endlessly. No turns, no lights. The GPS flickered and died. The meter froze. Outside, fog began to roll in, thick and gray. "Where do you want to go?" he asked, his voice cracking. She looked up into the mirror, and for the first time, he saw her face clearly. The blue eyes had vanished. In their place were two black pits, swirling with smoke. "You're already there," she said. The taxi jerked, violently, as if something had slammed into it. Rafi hit the brakes and turned around. The back seat was empty, the door still closed, no sign of her leaving. He sat frozen, his breath fogging the windshield. Then he noticed the smell. Burned metal, like something scorched. On the passenger seat beside him lay the same cracked amulet. He didn't tell anyone about it at first. Who would believe him? But things started to happen. At night, he'd see faces in the rearview mirror, pale, unfamiliar, eyes glowing faintly blue. His radio would switch channels on its own, always landing on static, filled with faint whispering. Then the accidents began. A passenger would scream that she saw someone in the back seat when there was no one there. Another refused to ride with him again, claiming the car watched her. Rafi tried throwing the amulet into the sea, but it always came back. Once he found it on the dashboard, still wet with seawater. Another time, it was hanging from his rearview mirror, spinning slowly. His wife noticed his change. Sleepless nights, trembling hands, eyes hollow. He told her everything one night in tears. She said she'd help him destroy it. They decided to burn the amulet. That night, they built a small fire in an empty field. The amulet hissed as it touched the flames, glowing blue, smoke curling upward like a living thing. The wind howled, and the fire turned black. When it finally died down, the amulet was gone. For a week, things were quiet. Rafi started to think it was over. He returned to work. The taxi felt normal again, silent except for the hum of the engine and the low murmur of the radio. Then one night, a call came through. "Pickup from the old harbor road." He froze. It was the same voice, the same static-filled channel. His dispatcher swore she hadn't sent the request. Rafi drove anyway, unable to resist the pull. The harbor was empty, mist crawling over the asphalt. He parked where he had picked her up the first time. The back door opened on its own. When he looked in the mirror, she was sitting there. Same black dress, same pale face, same stillness. "I thought it was gone," he whispered. "It never leaves," she said softly. "It just needs a new driver." Rafi's taxi was found 3 days later, engine running, headlights dim. The seats were soaked, the windows fogged from the inside. The driver's seat was empty, but fingerprints covered the steering wheel. Dozens of them, layered over each other, as if many hands had held it at once. The police filed it as a missing persons case, though some officers quit soon after, refusing to go near the harbor road again. They said the car radio kept turning on by itself, whispering his name. A month later, a new taxi appeared on the same route, same license number. The driver wore dark sunglasses, even at night, and never spoke. Passengers said he never looked at them, only into the mirror, and in that reflection, if you stared long enough, you could see a faint glimmer of blue, an eye, watching, waiting, ready to choose its next ride.
Like, subscribe, share, and click that bell icon.